10 years ago, having always beatboxed, never thinking it would be of any use. Then ended up winning some championships, and then my parents got off my back because they were like, oh, he's got a qualification. So like I'd won these championships, and I started doing beatbox stuff, but I got really bored of beatbox because it's so limiting, and I just wanted to be able to use my voice as a component instead of having to stand there just with the microphone the whole time. So what I've done is just been on this journey for the last sort of 7 years or so to try and make this machine come into existence. I tried Chaos Pads, and they're like, Chaos Pads are this, how you'll say, box with like a screen and their shit. It was just this nightmare to try and put together. There were wires everywhere, it was bullshit. So after that I tried using some freeware. It was this looper that someone had made called Mobius, and that was quite cool, but it was freeware, so it was unsupported, and that's fine when you're not in front of thousands of people and you don't want it to crash, but I was, so I couldn't use that. I tried like these 1U rack mount boxes that were made by this hobbyist who actually designs prison security software, but in his spare time he was making these units, and that was called the Looperlative. It's a clever name. So like I was using that for a bit at home, trying to get that to a state of readiness where I could take it out live, but it kept crashing on me. It was just the one dude doing it, and I couldn't get into the box to tweak it. I didn't know how long that guy was gonna like live, and he had like a liver complaint. So I'd be saying, dude, there's a bug here, it keeps crashing, and I heard nothing for 6 months, and finally he gets back to me. He's like, sorry, my liver had packed up, how can I help you? And by that point I'd already moved on to another attempted solution to try and get this thing to exist, which was something called Bidule by a company called Plogue, maybe you know it. They're a French company, they make audio stuff, and this thing is a kind of idiot's guide to modular routing environments for audio. So I used that for a bit, and I was hosting this program Mobius in it, which is a piece of freeware, and it just kept crashing, and I realised I was out of my depth. Knowing what I know now, I probably could have stuck with that. But I went to find some help, and I ended up using Max MSP. And again, that's got quite a steep learning curve if you don't know what you're doing with it. So I ended up going to this genius Max MSP guy called Sebastian Lexer at Goldsmiths University, and he built me what I thought was going to be the final thing, and it ended up being 3 years of essentially prototyping, because we couldn't get the CPU to a reasonable level. It was just maxed out, because Max MSP, being a modular environment, has this huge CPU overhead. So I just had no choice but to seek out somebody who could build it from the ground up in C. Originally we just wanted to build the engine at its core, just the audio engine that was doing all the buffer shuffling and stuff like that. I mean, that was all we really needed to reduce the CPU load. But it was a man called Dave Gamble, who some of you might have heard of. He's kind of, I think he invented maths. He's amazing. He's kind of like, he can bend the laws of maths. He's very clever. And he did this, he made this from scratch, I think just because he liked the idea of doing it. It was exciting to him to be able to sort of build something so raw from the ground up. So we engaged in this project, which at the time we thought was going to take like 2 weeks. He thought it was going to take 2 weeks. He could not have been more wrong. And for about the next 6 months, I was basically living in his house, working in a really unconventional way that would probably be a nightmare to most of you, and I don't think will ever be repeated in the history of computing. I was sitting there while he was coding, and it was amazing to watch because he's a super fast coder, like, incredible. But and that's the first time I've ever seen code being written live, really. But it was amazing to watch and to see someone's brain work in that way, and to see the thing kind of evolve, because at first I wrote a very detailed spec. But there are concepts in this, and I'll go into quite a few of them, but there's some which are kind of trade secrets, and these kind of, the robots are taking over. There's this kind of unpatented IP in here, which if I was to patent would cost me thousands of pounds per patent just to get the lawyer's fees in, and then patents are only worth your ability to fight them in court financially. So secrecy is the name of the game. I would love to have a camera on here showing you how this all works, but unless I was willing to hand out NDAs, I won't. So, but I can tell you a lot about some of the underlying processes. So, I mean, some of the things that you can't do with anything but the best looping devices or programs in the world are things like being able to replace audio and replace audio in a quantized way. So, for example, if I go and now find a replacement to it. Now, another thing I can do now is to double the length of that loop, so you won't hear it happening because the loop is iterating, but it'll just be iterating twice, or twice the length. And then I can cut into that again to make a musical phrase. So that's like, I mean, that's a bit shit, but that's kind of the kind of thing you can do. I mean, it's a way of generating musical phrases. You have a repeating phrase of some sort, you perform a manipulation on that, and then you make it longer, and you perform another manipulation on it, you make that longer again, you perform more manipulations, and that's kind of what most musical melodies are. So inherent in there, I use that all the time when I'm playing live. So that's like one of the more basic things that this can do. Another thing that no other looping system in the world could do was song sections. And I couldn't see it convincingly. Oh, I should mention, by the way, that if any of you know Ableton, it can almost do this, but it can't actually do it. And the things that it can't do, even though they've got a looper in there, the looper has an irrevocable latency that you can't get rid of. And I contacted them about it. I was like, why don't you compensate for the plugin latency? And they're like, we can't be bothered. That was literally their answer. It was like, we've got better things to do. And it's maddening because that I don't know why, I have no idea why they don't think that's the thing to attack. But so because of that, and because of the fact that if you want to freely move loops around, then I don't know whether that's within their API to do. I mean, I thought of using Max for Live, which is Max MSP. Recently having been integrated into Ableton, you can now sort of, they're one thing kind of. So that the CPU overhead again would have been too high. So I'll show you some more stuff that this can do. Song sections. So if I lay down a beat quietly, so I don't wake up the robots, and I can be like. Now back to section 1. Section 2. Section 1. So that's a really subtle thing that on all the loopers that I've seen, you can either do that and switch between loops, or you can overdub. And overdubbing is what I just said, is go, like that's overdubbing. So like all of these loopers that were available could do either that or overdubbing, or they could replace, but they couldn't do it in a quantized fashion, or they could resample through effects, which I'll show you in a minute, into the same loop, but they couldn't do any of the other things. So I just decided basically to take everything I'd ever seen in a looper, which all seemed like obvious steps to me, put them into the same spec, get someone to build it from the ground up, and for some reason I thought that would be an easy task, but it was 6 months of hard work. I'll show you some other things that it can do that other things can't. Well, it's weird. I guess it's like anything. It's the little things that make this unique. So, for example, the ability to stop and start loops freely just by pressing them. Weirdly, that isn't on anything else I've seen. It's weird. It's like, I'll tell you the problem. The problem is, the reason why this hasn't existed until now is because people have tried to make loopers, but they've kept it so secret when they've been making one that they never seem to have consulted someone that does looping when they're making it. And there's probably a lesson there for like anyone making anything. Like, it's weird. So that's, I think, why you don't find people doing that much looping, is because normally a looper is like a looping device enables you to just, you know, I mean, the way they sell it, anytime anytime like a company releases a looping device, the blurb normally says 140 hours of looping time. Like, when are you ever going to use 100? Like, you know, I could make a 140-hour loop here. I don't think any of you will be here when I finish recording it. So, I mean, it's weird that they don't seem to have consulted any looping artists. And actually, maybe I won't mention them by name, but there was a company who make some loopers, and I was talking to them about why their app sucks, because they came around my house to do some promo stuff, and I was like, you know, you want me to promote a piece of shit. I was like, you know, this sucks. And they're like, well, we don't know it sucks, tell me more. And I'm like, well, it doesn't do this, it doesn't do that, it doesn't do this, it doesn't do that. And all of these things are things which are vital for this to work. So I'll show you some more. What else can I show you? There's so much that it does, it's crazy. There's like a million ways to do each thing, and that's what's so good about this, is that any situation you're in, you can find a solution, like a workaround. So what a lot of looping systems can't do is to dynamically realign the the alignment of the entire project, which you need to be able to do. Nothing has ever been able to do that. So we've actually got 3 independent clocks running. And I'm going to need to think here about how much I can actually say about this. But we've got 3 independent clocks running, completely sort of free-floating, which I don't think has ever happened before. So there's a lot of clever buffer management going on. And that enables me to... It's been hard to demonstrate. Anytime I've tried to show someone this, it's been hard to demonstrate. So I'll start a line halfway through, for example. I'll be like... So I actually started recording that halfway through the musical phrase. So now if I restart it, it goes... But I want it to start at the beginning, so I can dynamically reset the start point, wait for it to come round, and then go... So you can't hear anything, but then when I restart it, it goes... So that's a really basic thing, but nothing does it. And I couldn't do what I do without that. Like, a million times I'll be, or even something as simple as, you know, if I'm going like, because you know when you're doing that. So I have like, so yes, using some effects. But, okay, I'll lay down a beat. Oh, and by the way, what I'm doing on the screen as I'm doing that, I've got the, this is why we couldn't use OSC or MIDI, is because I needed visual feedback of the loop itself. So I can see the loop, there's a little play bar going across. By trial and error, we figured out that you need to have sort of bar markers and line markers, and that took a lot of configuring to figure out an efficient way of visualizing all this data on screen. I wish I could show you guys. But it's, you know, so I've got this little ticker sort of running across that one kick drum. And I was just lining it up. So we've got a ratio of finger movement to wave movement, and that's vital because that's now running in time with the clock because I've lined it up. Now if I go into a preset like this, so if the clock is out of time, it'll sound shit. I'll show you. It starts to shift. So that's vital, and I've never seen that on anything else, the ability to just dynamically realign where the clock thinks it is. So it's kind of a time machine as well, because to be able to, for the machine to be aware of the throughput latency, and you'd probably have to talk to Dave Gamble, the guy that built this, for him to say exactly how he's managing this memory. But there are 3 independent loci that tell the system what it should be grabbing. And there's all kinds of offsets going on, and it's actually calibrated pretty much to this computer. initially, anyway, it was kind of a blunt tool for doing all this stuff, and the program's become more modular and more segmented as we have slowly sort of increased the feature set, and we kept sort of running into points where we're like, shit, we need to refactor again. So I suppose if we'd have started out with a really ambitious spec, like the ultimate spec, and programmed to that, making allowances for where it was going to go, then we wouldn't have had to refactor so many times. And I guess that's just good programming now. But like, I mean, up till very recently, I was kind of doing very bad programming practice and just kind of pushing through all these features that I wanted, rather than attacking bugs, which is really bad. So it's been a very arse-backwards way of working. I mean, I'm not going to do anything like that again. I was also taking the live rig out, it having been changed like a week before, and then just trying to do a gig with it. And I replaced where all the buttons were, and we changed loads of stuff in the engine, and it would crash in front of 5,000 people. So I've been learning on the job about what is and is not appropriate. But one of the things that was just part of my feature creep problem is the thing which I use the most throughout the gig, which is this instant sampler, which is I've got a machine here, Native Instruments machine, and that's the thing that I can do this like instant sampling with. Instance. But that allows me to do really cool stuff like being able to go like that, sample it, and then to be able to assign that to a keyboard. So it's kind of the 80s. But then if I want, I can add sort of next level Eno-like effects to it. So go. So it sounds kind of granular, but it's not. It's actually just loads of reverb and stuff like that. And, well, there is some granular stuff going on in it. But I mean, that wasn't a fantastic example. It'd be good if it was like really loud and shit. See if I can get over it now. It's kind of, that kind of stuff is cool to do. The ideas I've got for this are I want to make that instant sampler into an instant workstation, which would be ambitious as fuck, but not actually that time consuming, really. In fact, not ambitious at all. It just takes doing. I could go into why it would be easy to do. Because basically, well, it's funny, isn't it? As soon as you come up with an idea, it's always easy to come up with 70 others. As soon as you start playing with something, I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Brett Victor. Maybe everyone. He's rather brilliant. He's got this whole thing about inventing on principle, and he's a big advocate of the idea that you should be able to code and dynamically see how the code is changing on screen, so you can kind of play the code like an instrument. And he started off doing sort of improvised music. And we've been in contact just about the similarities between what it is we're doing. So it's this kind of musical ethos of being able to sort of not have to stop to think as you're making music, which is so cool about this for me. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can sort of show you quickly or anything more I can tell you. I think maybe I've said enough and I should take questions. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, sir. Why is it not all over the what? Why is it not open source? Good question. I guess the answer to that is probably that because I have seriously thought about open source. Oh yeah, this is my beautiful assistant Adam. Please, round of applause for my beautiful assistant Adam. So yeah. Isn't he gorgeous? Oh my god, look at that ass. So yeah, why is it not open source? I think the short and the long of it is I'm selfish. And I think from a programming point of view, it would be amazing to have it be an open source project. It would get done a lot quicker, a lot cheaper. And I'm sure that you sound like an advocate of open sourcing, because it admits of degrees, doesn't it? I mean, because you can take a view on open sourcing depending on your circumstances, and you can change the open source project to fit your circumstances. Really though, because I'm the only person able to do this, having this, like at the moment I'm the only user of this software, and so long as I remain the only user, I'll remain the only person that can do this stuff. And that, annoyingly, for other people that would want to do it, is very important to me, because I make all my money that I make through performance. And so I suppose that's why. Because if it was just a programming project, then there'd be no harm in it. I mean, can you think of I'd love to hear a counterexample of why. Beautiful assistant. Where's my beautiful assistant? Do we have any? Yeah, a counterexample of why you think that might not work. I'm just fascinated to hear, because I'm fascinated by it.
I don't think it might not work, but I think it might be interesting to look at licensing that software. That way you can make money and have the great performance at the same time.
Yeah. I've been having talks with one software company in particular who I'm particularly interested in working with. I won't say who, but I deliberately haven't approached the bigger ones like Native and Ableton and stuff like that, because I think I just get sucked into them, and their like their ethos is, well, they're a business, they're big businesses, and they would happily probably take on the ideas, but then I would lose control. And actually, to be honest, the only real reason that I would look past my like obvious selfishness as like someone who wants to perform with this thing that's taken so much time to make, the only reason why I would sort of sell this for others to use at the moment is in return for work being done on this system itself. So the arrangement that I've been talking with this software company that are interested about is a kind of weird deal where they would help me build this rig that would inform the sort of iPad-based program that it would be. Just be like an app. It'd be like a condensed version of this, but there'd be two separate rigs. So that's the kind of thing I've been talking about. I think it's a very unusual. I don't think that's ever been done before. I don't think they'll go for it, to be honest. I wouldn't if I was them. It sounds weird. So what I'm actually trying to do is, I mean, I've already, I just hired someone today to do 3 months of contract work. I hired someone a week ago to do 3 months of contract work. All sort of very kind of formal employment and scope of work, all detailed out and stuff like that. Because there's a sort of huge and burgeoning bug lists and feature lists and stuff. So it's just trying to manage this project as best as possible. I know that there are advocates of open sourcing who abhor the idea that anyone should pay for software ever. I don't know how extreme you are in your views, but it is interesting, and I have definitely considered it, because it seems like a way to just accelerate the speed at which this gets worked on. And there's an argument to suggest that actually, if it was open source and if people did start using it, then I could always take credit for their success as well, and that would reflect well on me. Say what? I'd be even more of a hero to men with beards. Yeah, that's true. Does anyone else have anything to add to that, or a different question?
Yeah, I'm also a man with a beard, and I actually agree with. I really agree with the way that you're doing it, and I think it's because it's very easy to look at it because it's software from a software maker's point of view. But you're using it as a tool in order to create some form of art, and ultimately you want to be the chief driver for where it's going, but also you don't want to be, sort of the project leader for people contributing back and everything like that. I could see how potentially if you were to reach an agreement with a company whereby they produce an edition of what you're doing, and therefore you get the benefits back from that. But I think it's that whole thing of having total artistic freedom with it. And I think it's really, really important, because the reason I went into, tried to do some music for a while, but I just stopped almost straight away because of my immediate frustration with the tools. So, I see where you're coming from, personally.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. More and more you're seeing musicians making their own instruments. I mean, every instrument that exists was made by a musician. Like the saxophone was the most recent sort of orchestral instrument, but I mean, it hasn't been possible before for people to have the means to make their own instruments of the kind that there are now. Like, it used to be quite a fringe activity. There's a guy called Tim Exile who could quite easily be here talking about a very similar system that he made. He was my inspiration to start. He uses Reactor, and that's by Native Instruments, and it's an incredible thing. But I've been talking to him a lot about, you know, how whether or not we're insane trying to do this kind of stuff, and it's an interesting journey to be on if you are a designer of software but you're not the coder. It's interesting because that's kind of frowned upon on Kickstarter, for example. You're not allowed to fund a project if it's software and you're not the coder, so I guess they don't want to be a kind of VC channel. They want to make sure it's about the arts and about people actually doing things themselves. But I can't help but think that, do you know what, there was a Will.i.am came up with the wisest thing I've heard in a while, which was because he's been trying to make stuff recently, and he was like, I want to learn to code because coders are like the priesthood of old, you know, and everyone needs to learn how to code. So Will.i.am is wise. Who knew? If only he'd make wiser musical decisions. Yes, sir.
So would...
Beautiful assistant with microphone. Oh, we actually have a genuinely beautiful assistant now. That's awesome.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, we have one over there first. Sorry, we'll come to you next.
Hi, thanks. It's really interesting to hear this journey you've been on and to bring in that open source thing. I totally understand where you come from. I'm an app developer, but I come from a design and a creative background. And being a kind of part-time musician, I play bass in a band. I've seen the frustration with software that's available and not being able to do things, and you go, this is sucking up way too much of my time, and I need to develop something that's going to not, you know, drive me mad and drive me crazy. So keeping control of what you've done, I think, is the right thing to do. But I'm a big open source kind of proponent for all the stuff I do. I try and create open source widgets. I know that what I'm developing may require 15 components, but there's no reason why you can't create a ground level component that your magic works on, but is powered that people could potentially go off in some really interesting directions with something that doesn't really give away what you're doing. But what you're doing right now is almost open source. You're talking about the project, you're not being closed about it, you're being quite open about a lot of the processes.
This is the most open I've been about. I mean, well, it's more that no one actually gives a shit apart from people like yourselves. So I've not actually had an opportunity to sort of talk about it, but yeah.
But I think if you were to do more things like this, and there's lots of discussions on user experience and user interaction, and I think coders really need to be part of that design and start to learn that world, because it's one and the same. It's not separate things, and that's where the problems arise. So that's just kind of my input, and I'm just being very interested to hear it. So thank you.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I think the thing with open source that I've learned in the brief time that I've actually been sort of even vaguely aware of it is that it very much depends on your circumstances as to what kind of open sourcing licensing you will use, and you know, whether or not it will suit you and your project. But I'd love to actually have a talk with you and you as well, just about open sourcing artists, because it does fascinate me, and there may well be a way to sort of open things up without giving. I mean, to be honest, you'd need to buy 3 iPads and this exact equipment to sort of do it. And I've also heard it said from some people that have, like, the counter argument to me saying, oh, I want to keep hold of this and I don't want anyone else to get hold of it. Like, they're like, well, no one else could do what you're doing with it. Which is, if that is true, then that presents a problem when I actually come to release this, because it means that the market for it will be very, very witheringly small. But I don't know if that's true. I think there is some things to do. I mean, even if there was an iPad as a toy for kids, I think it would be really fun to use. And you could always have sort of a variety of different levels of complexity. One's 69p and the top one's 20 quid or something. That's the kind of thing I'm looking at. I mean, I will say at the moment I'm not looking at open sourcing, and I'm not looking at selling a product at the moment. But the longer term plan in the next 3 years, which at the moment I'm just writing up a kind of product trajectory for it all. Yeah, I want to have a product out, and to be honest, I want to be sort of at the helm of trying to make this sort of these ideas that I've encapsulated here part of a new way of making music. And it sounds kind of maybe insane to say it, but I think there is something inherent in the idea of not having to stop during the music making process, which is fundamental to keeping creativity going. Because I can now improvise. It's the idea of being able to improvise freely. like that's why I'm doing this. It's like making stuff with my voice. That's not why I've made this. Like in my full rig, I've got a guitar, I've got keyboards and stuff. So I'm kind of convinced that there is a market for this that doesn't realise it's there yet. Maybe I'm insane. I don't know. Any other questions?
Yeah, so you kind of asked my question. Aren't you curious how other people would use this?
Yes.
Because like saxophone wouldn't have Charlie Parker in his mind, but certainly your beatbox talents and the way you sing are unique and cannot be replaced. But imagine very different people that don't have to go through the pain or don't have the means to like live in some developer's basement for 6 months. It is indeed a new type of instrument. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of sides to it, I think, in terms of who might use this. Let's say it was a VST, so it's a plug-in for your DAW. Then I think everyone who makes music would use it for just recording takes, and it would just be part of the recording process. That's, I think, what Ableton were trying to do when they did theirs. If it's a standalone app, then I think it would definitely be the kind of thing that you'd want to do sort of small cafe performances with. Like that's what most looping devices are used. Or there's a whole sort of swathe of these kind of new sort of punky like singer-songwriter people who just do like a bit of shitty beatbox and then do a bunch of layering, and people are like, wow, what is that? It's looping, it's interesting, it's new. But I think that'll become more commonplace. But I mean, I would love to give, I suppose, in about a year's time, once I've sort of iron this engine out more, because it's still quite young and still quite rough around the edges in parts, but is to give it to people like Johnny Greenwood from Radiohead, who has built his own looper in Max MSP, and I doubt it's that complex, but I'm sure he'd use this. Herbie Hancock saw me do a TED talk, and we were hanging out, and then he was like, you should come to my studio, and I did, and now I can die happy. But he's really chill, and I taught him to use it, and he was really into the idea. I think there's something fundamental about musicianship that is to do with, well, I believe that improvisation is all that creativity ever is. Like, you're improvising at different rates. You're improvising, you never know where creativity comes from necessarily, and I think when musically, because it's temporal and it's linear, so long as you're kind of surfing the moment, I think then you'll be making the decisions that are the truest to yourself. So I'm fascinated to see what other people would do with it. You know, I'd love to hear all my favourite bands and singers and artists to see what they would do with this. Like, wouldn't you love to see Bjork just with something like this, just sort of going off on one, see what comes out of her head, really test it? I don't know. I think it'd be really interesting. Any other questions?
Cool. First, thanks for the talk. Really cool to hear more about what you do and how you actually do it.
Good.
Second thing is not really a question about what you do, but my wife's due to have her first baby in 3 weeks.
Sorry, Nick?
My wife's due to have her first baby in about 3 weeks. Are you able to give us a quick message from your amazing lyrical voice?
I can do better than that. I'll write the song. Have you chosen a name yet?
Not quite yet. We don't know what the sex is.
Right, okay.
The initials of it so far are LB.
So it'll be LB whether it's a boy or a girl?
Yeah. Well, no, that's not really the actual name, but that's a pet name at the moment.
Okay, cool.
Indeed.
I'll do a little song. What kind of music do you think the child will like? Gabba. Will it like Gabba? Are you going to give me a go? Death metal, perhaps? No. What about, I don't know. Hush, little baby, don't you cry. Daddy's in the Millennium Dome. I don't know what it means when everyone simultaneously screams. Yeah. What is that shit though? Seriously, what is the shout? What are they shouting? Does anyone know? No one knows. It's a mystery. Okay. Well, that was the song. I hope you liked it. I know. I wish I could do. If I start doing beats, then a giant mech bot will burst through that curtain and just murk everyone. It'll be fucking savage. No worries. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Any beautiful assistants? Oh, sorry, you next.
Yeah, just 5 minutes ago you mentioned Adolf Sax and the saxophone. Do you see yourself as like a pioneer in electronic music, like Adolf Sax was to modern music? I'm sorry if it's rather personal.
It's too early to tell, I think. I don't know. I hope so. I mean, to be honest, this machine system is at the sort of early pupil stages of what I want it to be. And actually, this is what I was going to say to you over there, sir. I was going to say that the dreams that I have for this system are such that there won't be any necessity to be able to beatbox to use it, and I don't want you to have to load in samples to have to get what you want out of it, because lots of the ideas that I have, which are yet to be implemented, are about simple, intuitive, super intuitive ways to control things using very few factors. Like, there are gestures here. I mean, I'd say on this one screen there's maybe 600 functions, and there are sort of linear morphing planes on every slider, because it uses Tornado, which is a VST, but I had it adapted. There's about 50 changes that I got made to it, and now you can buy that as their 1.5 version. But and I provided them a bunch of presets and stuff, and helped them with promo and stuff. But yeah, I mean, the amount of control there is in this is just nuts. So, and an interesting thing has been trying to design this around the more complex music that there is. So, like dance music, like complex electronic music. There are things like drops and builds and song sections and stuff like that. So the whole interface strategy has been designed around these musical tropes that you see occurring in all of dance music and in all of music, actually. So yeah, I'm really up for trying to continue to innovate to the point where I don't need to beatbox much at all, and anyone that uses it wouldn't have to. And I'd love to talk to anyone later about any ideas that you have about intuitive music making. And I should say, actually, at this point, I am fully hiring people, so and it is proper paid work. So if anyone is excited by this project, I can guarantee you it is exciting and it is well managed and it is proper. It's a proper job. So like, yeah. Anyway, sorry. Yes. So I hope that answers whatever question it was I was answering. Cool. Any more questions? I believe you have one.
Hi, Hayden.
How's it going?
I'm just wondering if you've seen Imogen Heap's Ableton glove.
Yeah,
what's
man.
going on the intuitive side of that, and how that's going to have the implications. Because you're saying if this was being released to the market, then there's still these DJ apps that are coming out, DJ technologies and little MIDI controllers that's just flood the whole electronic scene with wannabe DJs that push a button and become tractor DJs. So I'm wondering, do you think there's going to be a crossover between live performance and DJing, and will you see this equipment potentially going into a club where people will play for 2 hours on it, just improvising as they go?
I think in its current state, no. I'm still experimenting with interface strategies and sort of how to manage all the loops. At the moment they're sort of in pairs, and some of them are mutually exclusive and some of them aren't. And I want it as much as possible to have no modes, to have no shift modes, to have it all on one place and have everything controlled gesturally. And that's largely what I've done. But the designs that I have, all these sort of iterations that I've kind of designed, are yet to be implemented, but they even further take it towards the kind of thing where people could use it much more easily. Imogen Heap's gloves are just amazing. If anyone hasn't seen them, you should check out Imogen Heap's gloves. I'm mates with Imogen, and she's told me how much she spent on that shit, and it is staggering. But some of it she's done as part of people's PhDs, yet the cost is still staggering. Like, she's invested what you would expect it to cost to do something like that. It's nuts. Her gloves, I should say, are, for anyone who doesn't know, specially made gloves made of very thin material, and she's constantly sort of iterating. So at the moment they're trying this super thin fibre stuff, and I probably shouldn't say too much about that either. But she's able to just walk around the stage, and there's a Kinect at the back, and she can sort of just walk around freely. She's completely wireless, and it's all very elegant because she's Imogen Heap, and it's beautiful. And she's kind of sort of gesticulating and sort of doing sort of hand ballet, and the music's just happening. And she recently took on a project manager because it was just because she had 10 people working for her, a materials girl, several electronics guys, 2 coders, one of whom is now doing some stuff for me. I mean, we've met up, me, her, and Tim Exile actually, and just had a kind of knowledge exchange and like a kind of, you know, all confirming to each other that we're not mad and that this is a way forward. It feels really exciting to be part of a movement where people are just beginning to make their own shit. There's a guy called Onyx Ashanti who is also worth checking out, who is delightfully mad. He has built this, I mean, what would you even call it? He calls what he does beat jazz. He's kind of a genius, actually. He's taught himself pure data in the last 3 years, which I'm sure many of you look down on, if you know it. But he's got very deep with it all, and he's got a heads-up display, and he's got these 2 things in his hand. He's a sort of an amazing classical saxophonist. And he was like, why am I doing this when I could just have a MIDI controller and just separate my hands out and have 2 wireless things and just blow in a little piece in my mouth? And he's covered in sort of LEDs and sort of wireless packs and stuff, and he just makes this next level music with, you know, sensors in his hands to judge the tilt and stuff. But at the moment it's still quite fringe to be delving that deep into stuff, but it's becoming way more, way easier for people to design their own instruments. Like, you've got things like Max MSP now, you've got simpler ones like Vigil, you've got things like Audio Mulch, you've got things like, I mean, Ableton, and what Max MSP has now granted it by virtue of a community, which makes shitty, unstable things that you can crash your live set with. I mean, but it's the beginnings of exactly what you're talking about. It's really exciting to be a part of that. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
You mentioned improvisation being a very important part of your music progression. Do you ever do anything with generative stuff? Because I'm really into generative music making. Can I just set something going and let the computer do it? Like doing a reaction to the computer rather than you forcing an improvisation set instead.
Yeah, I think that stuff is super, super interesting. I believe the musical Turing test has been passed, hasn't it? I think that happened. I mean, that's interesting, because I mean, music is essentially patterns, and I don't know, there are some guys who've made like a Bach generator, and it creates convincing chorales. I've not heard them, but I've heard of this system. But once I've heard that, I think I'll be able to make more of a judgment about how interested I am in generative music. But it is fascinating to see just how deep you can program. It's the same as AI, really. It's the same kind of problem. How much can you actually say? It's just an interesting test. I mean, to be able to work some of that stuff into here will be very, very interesting. Like, for example, I'm fascinated by why it is that we find a beat. So, for example, like why is that satisfying? Why is that better than something that's shit? There must be an equation. There's got to be an algorithm. There's got to be some just balance of factors. The weight of the snare, but the snare being distinct from a kick as defined by a certain... There must be a way to have a perfect break generator or something which can just create... I am fascinated by it. I'd love to have a chat with you afterwards about that as well. That's really interesting stuff here. Anyone else? It's a series of more and more beautiful assistants.
Hey.
Hey, man.
Just wondering, from a future perspective of your creativity, you always have a lot of interaction with the crowd. Do you think you could integrate something digitally, technology, social media, maybe bringing in some kind of app where you can interact as a crowd to have the crowd generate music but through you? Kind of like a medium.
That would be crazy. Like, I do lots of stuff that's very, very user-generated, but with varying results. I did a thing I did a tour 3 years ago where I was trying to combine all the different shows I do. So I do like a comedy show, which is where it's like in seated auditoria, and people are shouting out suggestions of things that they want me to do. And I did a show recently where it was called One Album Per Hour, and we were like, we'll make an album in an hour. So what are the song titles? And people just shout out song titles. And keeping control of people is insane. And I wonder sort of to what extent it would be good to have an app which handles those suggestions, or just use Twitter. But I don't really want people on their phones if they're in the room. And there's this feeling of engagement that you just, when the clamour starts and the shouting starts, it can be a bit much. But when it does work and everyone feels like they're genuinely part of something, if there was a way to encapsulate that kind of clamour in the design of a sort of maybe a word cloud, something like that could be really cool. In terms of musical ideas, the trouble is that democracy is the worst form of government except for all the other kinds, and like I can't help but get the feeling that there'd be some people in there who would musically troll. Do you know what I mean? They would be the first example of that being possible, but it would happen. You'd get people saying, "Oh, drop now," because I get enough of that in my own brain. There's enough like voices in my own brain being like, "Go on, do the drop now, do it now," and I have to be like, "No, brain, shush. You must wait. They're not ready. Keep doing the build. Keep doing the build. Go on, drop it. No." So it's like there's a battle going on in my head anyway. What I am interested in actually is there's 3 or 4 different people that I've seen, different groups of people who have built similar things. There's one in Beardyman, one in Glastonbury. These rooms, have you seen these things? There's like a room you can walk into, like a tent, and there's like levers and pulleys and buttons, and everyone's collaboratively making music. Someone was talking to me about Moldova. Yeah. He's a guy, he's like a maker dude in San Francisco, who's made this collaborative sort of MPC thing. It's like a bunch of MPC pads that 4 people can sit around, and you can't make a mistake on it, but you still feel like you are controlling the music, because you are. It's just all tightly quantized, but your options are limited to the sample sets that he's loaded in there. So in that sense, it's very collaborative, very inclusive. Anyone, musical or not, can use it. Obviously, people with more of a musical sense fare better on it, but that actually connects a little bit with the whole kind of musical intelligence being built into the system. And I think there's a more passive kind of musical intelligence that can be built in, whereby the design itself limits you to certain choices which are musical, as opposed to not, like things like quantization. But there might be more interesting things to do where, if I was to release this, you could have like a stabilizers mode, and maybe it would all change to like kiddie colours or something, and then certain moves would be banned. So if you set it to, I mean, you could have theoretically, you could have a thing that sort of, you could have a camera on the front, sees how much the crowd is moving, and if they're not all dancing, if it doesn't detect much movement, maybe it doesn't let you do a drop yet. I don't know. Yes. Those kind of ideas are really interesting to me. Or even just building it into the system, so you could have like a sort of teach me mode where, say you've got like a filter and you're trying to sort of do a build up, it could advise a filter. It could be like that annoying fucking paperclip in Windows. You could sort of be like, "Have you tried doing a build up?" So you, it could just show you. It could just have like little training wheels. Like you could have the slider kind of get a red sort of thing climbing up it, which just look like danger, and you feel maybe you should address it. You could build certain amounts of springiness into certain parts of the interface that could sort of be tied to what the computer knows would be a good musical decision based on maybe cloud-sourced, spider-based sort of triangulations of what makes good dance music. Who knows? I don't know, it depends how deep you want to get with it, but it's interesting. Thanks. No worries, I think I veered massively off topic there. But anyone else? No, that was all the questions. Yes.
Hello.
Oh, what's up? Sorry, he was pointing at you. I didn't see.
So,
yeah.
So basically, I don't know if there are people out here in this place that are making music. So it's gonna be your advice to the people who just make music, and they might be a bit shy to show to the other people, and they might be sitting in their bedrooms and just tweaking the buttons. So I know that experience and practice and hard work is the main thing, but what's going to be your version of the world? So
it's my advice to people making music.
Yeah.
Do it.
No,
do it
advice
see
to
what
the people,
happens.
advice to the newcomers, like people who want to make music.
Well, I would say do what you want to do. make what you want to make. Don't think about genres because they are arbitrary. Make whatever you want to make, and don't listen to anyone as well. Don't listen to what your mates think of your music. Don't ask people's opinions on your music. Don't do what you want to do, and then your music will be interesting. That's the advice that's the advice I'm trying to give myself at the moment. Is to try and disregard, to just trust the gut. If you like it, then it's likely other people will. Maybe not the people you'd expect, but people will. Yes.
Well, I'm just really happy to see you. But I want to ask one simple question, or maybe more, I don't know. But I really love you, but the things you do, and we with our friends are trying to do the same things. My friend is a boxer, I am lying, but we are trying to make music like with Ableton.
With what?
Ableton.
Ableton.
Ableton. Yeah. And I'm just really amazed how you can.
You want to see these screens, basically, is what you're saying. Yeah. Well, I mean, let's talk afterwards. I mean, when I finish this, I'll come down there, and I would love to have chats with people and get people's details, because it's a fascinating thing. I'd love to see what you guys have made and start, sharing ideas. It's always good to hear them. There's a case to be made for openness. So yeah, man. No, yeah, I'd love to see what you guys are doing. Oh, I've done a competition, like sort of quasi hackathon-esque thing. It's gone out on the social media portal for these guys, which I've just signed up to. But yeah, I've put out the call to basically, if there's an idea for a VST that you think will excite me enough that I will put it in this rig, then basically you can describe it and qualify it with how you think it will sound, how you think it will work, what challenges you think it might face in its implementation, or anything else. What the fuck is going on here? They've got glow sticks. This was just getting important and now they're chanting. It's a Soundclash, right? Fuck it. Yeah! I'm gonna get shouted at so much. I'm not allowed. Right, anyway, as I was saying, yeah, I'm hiring, so send me some shit. Yeah, there's a competition basically. If you can think up a VST that is really exciting, really interesting, and would be a nice addition to this, just write some short words on it to sort of describe it, and me and Dave, who are running the project, will look through all these and contact the most interesting ones that we think were written by the most interesting and sort of competent people. So anything you want to put in it to show that you know what's what, that will help. And because as I say, we're just looking for people to collaborate with. We'd love to work with people who are really, really into the idea of improvisation as a means of creativity, and people who are musically trained enough to know what a beat is as opposed to a bar, but beyond that you don't need to have any musical knowledge really, just so that the terminology makes sense to you. It is all in C++, so Java's lovely but it doesn't help us, and stuff like that. So it's a fairly deep project. It is very challenging, but there is work to be done at various levels, from the cosmetic through to deep engine fuckery and memory management and stuff like that. So yeah, as I say, we are hiring and we're just looking to see if there are people who are as passionate about this kind of thing and as interested in working on this as we are. And the hashtag, I'm told by my beautiful assistant, is CP Beardyman. That's the tag. How much more time have I got left? I've got 5 minutes left. Shall I make some music, or has anyone got any questions? Yeah? Okay, cool. Okay, what kind of music should I make?
Dubstep.
Another lullaby? Original thinking from the man at the back there.
Drum and bass.
Drum and bass lullaby?
Dubstep.
Drum and bass, old school lullaby. Alright, and this is gonna which is gonna inculcate the robot apocalypse. Let's go. So, drum and bass, robot, lullaby.
With the baby crying.
With a baby cry. Do you know a funny story? A mate of mine was making a tune and he's invited his housemate in, this girl, and she's gone, oh, I hate drum and bass. And he's gone, how can you hate drum and bass? And she's gone, because it just sounds like crying babies. So he made her own special tune that I'm not a word of a lie, it sounded exactly like this. The most fucking disturbing thing I have ever heard, man. Right, I'll make a lullaby. No, I've made a fucking lullaby. Give me a lullaby. A lullaby. No suggestion from people.
Dubstep.
Dubstep.
Yeah.
I remember dubstep. Who remembers dubstep? That was fun for a while, wasn't it? Shall I watch? What? Latin dubstep. All right. What's this song called? Let's get a suggestion of a song title. Conquistador. Okay. This is a Latin dubstep song called Conquistador. Or is it? Who knows? Oh, hang on. That's fucking... Yeah, brilliant. So you can see, as you can see, we need coders. 1, 2. There you go. Won't you get off my shore? Conquistador.
Well, I would like to thank you very much for your attention. It has been extremely gratifying to finally explain this thing to people who give a flying fuck how it is working. I now wish to speak to you individually to try and convince you to come and do code for me in exchange for money. Thank you very much. 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 Thank you very much.